Hey guys, we're back with another Odd and Unexplained, and today we're going to be talking about Brandon Lawson. This is a guy that went missing in Texas in 2013, and this one has so many phone calls and things going on. I'm going to try and use the whiteboard as best as I possibly can to do the timeline again and make sure that we can get everything as clear as possible. So let's dive in. Alright, so before we get into the timeline, we'll talk a little bit about Brandon. Now this case is pretty recent, 2013, so it's easy enough to get on Google and search up all kinds of things about it. But he was 26 years old when he went missing. He was last seen at his San Angelo house in Texas the night he left to go cool off because he was having a bit of a spat with his live-in girlfriend slash wife. They've been living together for some time. And yeah, he just went, 11:53, he went out and he was never seen again. So here's the timeline. Alright guys, so at 11:53 he left because of the fight with his girlfriend, Lawson. Supposedly to go to his dad's, just to cool off, drive around, I suppose. And then at 12:38, we have the call to his brother Kyle saying that he was out of gas. Now, from what I gather, nothing was really suspect at this point. He was just out of gas. At 12:50, we have the 911 call, which is famous, well, infamous, I guess. You could go listen to that on YouTube. I might actually crop it into this episode. And at 1:10, they arrive at his truck. When I say they, I mean his brother Kyle and his girl, and also a deputy Neil arrive at the truck and check it out. And then at 1:19, we have the final call from Brandon. And the time span is, it starts at 11:53 p.m. on August 8th, and it goes into the early morning of August 9th, the 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock hour in the a.m. So let's talk about it. 11:53 p.m., fight. So at 11:53, he left the house in San Angelo because he had a bit of a fight with Lawson, who was living with him at the time. They had been with each other since they were teenagers, and they had some children together. They had 3 children together, and then Brandon also had another kid by another mother. So anyway, Brandon left the house, and he was going to his father's house, and I assume it's just one of those things, you leave the house because you're a little bit too pissed off to be in that kind of space, and you just go and you go somewhere and cool off. He drives, and he's not heard of for about 45-ish minutes, and then at 12:38 a.m. on August 9th now, he calls his brother Kyle. Yeah, so let's talk about that. So at 12:38, he calls Kyle to tell him that he's run out of gas. Now, there's nothing wrong with that so far, other than that he's in a bad situation. So the part that seems odd to me about this, and I could be totally reading into this too much, is that if he knew where he was going, you think he would have known what it would have taken to get to that point. Unless, what very well could have been is that he's just so amped up from having the fight that it just wasn't in his mind, and he just went and, he ran out of gas. That's probably what happened, but you guys can make your own judgments about that. Now, at 12:34, 4 minutes before this phone call to his brother Kyle, he tried to call Lawson. The call went unanswered. And then at 12:36, 2 minutes before this phone call, he tried to call her again, and it also went unanswered. That's kind of interesting to me. It was probably just him calling to tell her that he had run out of gas at this point. I'll get to why I think that later. So yeah, nothing, from what I can tell, strange has happened yet. I think possibly he may have started to walk up the road at this point. Maybe. All right, so at 12:50 a.m., 12 minutes after the first call to Kyle, we get a 911 call, which is the infamous, creepy 911 call that I will play now.
9/2013, 0:50 and 38 seconds.
911 emergency.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the field. We're just pushing some guys over. Right here going towards Javelin on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here. Got shaken to the woods. Please hurry.
Okay, now run that by me.
I'm not talking to him. I actually ran into him.
Ah, you ran into him. Okay.
Got the first guy.
Do you need an ambulance?
Yeah, no, I need the cops.
Okay. Is anybody hurt? Hello? Hello? Hello?
All right, so that was the 911 call. Very strange, very creepy. I'm not giving you a version with subtitles, and I'm not going to tell you what I think was being said for a reason, especially before I put the whole line of events out there. I don't really like it when people put assumptions out, and there's no way of knowing exactly what he said. There's your best guess, and there's probably some pretty excellent guesses, but it's not known for sure. And because of that, I'm going to save my judgments for the end of the video. Now, there are a few definite things that came from the 911 call. One was, we know the time, 12:50 a.m., August 9th. So we know that. Another one was that he definitely said first guy in there somewhere. And they definitely said he needed the cops or the police. So those are interesting things to think about. Now at 12:48, he did call Odessa Lawson one more time. I'm not sure if whatever the event was had happened at this point. Well, nobody's for certain. But there was one missed call at 12:48 to Odessa Lawson, and then he called the police. All right, so it's worth noting that also around this time there was a third call. This was from a truck driver that was on US 227, and he reported a truck that was abandoned and hanging off into the asphalt a little bit, and it was hazardous. So this, I believe, prompted them to send out a deputy to this area to investigate. Okay, so at 1:10 a.m., both Kyle and Deputy Neil arrive at the truck, Brandon's truck. Let's talk a little bit about that. The truck was found on US 227 about 4.5 miles south of Bronte, Texas. Some articles have said that it was near a rest stop, and some didn't mention this at all. It very well could be. I think even the location can be found on Google Earth. I've seen that a few places. Brandon isn't at the truck when they get there, and both Kyle and his lady friend and Deputy Neil arrive there all around the same time. Brandon is nowhere to be seen. So Deputy Neil and Kyle and the woman that is with Kyle, Audrey, none of them are aware of Brandon's 911 call that occurred at 12:50 when they get there at 1:10. Now they go to his truck, and they find that it's unlocked and that Brandon had his wallet with him and his phone with him and his keys with him. So none of that stuff was found in the truck. The truck had no signs of being damaged or anything like that. So the Deputy Neil, he reached in and he put the hazards on, and he radioed for the truck to be towed at 8 a.m. that morning. Deputy Neil told Kyle that he was at the truck because of the truck driver that had called in about the truck being abandoned in the road prior to this. So again, they didn't know about the weird frantic 911 call that had just occurred 20 minutes prior. 1:19, we have the final string of events, the final call, the final time Brandon Lawson is heard from. And before I talk about that phone call, there are a few weird discrepancies here. I was able to find two versions of this event. One of them was that Kyle took the call while he was right in front of Deputy Neil, but he decided not to tell Deputy Neil about the call because Brandon had an outstanding warrant on his name, which is true. Brandon did have a warrant. And apparently Kyle was being the cool brother, and he wasn't going to tell the cop. And that's why he thought Brandon was in fact hiding in the field, was to not get arrested for the warrant. The other version of this story, which is the one I tend to believe more, is that Deputy Neil had already left the scene and he was cruising up and down 227 and in the surrounding area looking for Brandon. And then while they were in the call, they being Kyle and the woman that was with him, Audrey, then they took the call while they were in the car. Now, it is worth noting as well that around this time, Audrey was texting Kyle, excuse me, don't mind that. Audrey was texting Brandon and telling him that there was a cop around his truck. And apparently this was also because he had the warrant and they weren't sure if he was hiding from the officer or whatever. So there's that weirdness. So now to the phone call itself. So he gets on the phone with Kyle, and he says that he's 10 minutes up the road from the truck. And he says that he's in a field, and he says that he's bleeding, and the call has bad reception, and all this and that, and then the call drops. And that's the last time Brandon was heard on the phone. So Kyle keeps trying to call Brandon, and it keeps ringing normally, but no answer, of course. And then around 3 a.m., the phone goes from ringing to just straight to voicemail. This tells me that at that time the phone was either shut off or it ran out of battery. So who knows? And that's the story of Brandon Lawson's disappearance. So this one's really strange to me, and it's different in one big way. As I researched the previous 2 episodes that I have done before this, as the more facts I got, the more sort of explanation for why these guys had disappeared had fell into place. And it was clear to me that at least there was one good explanation. It might not be the one that actually happened, but there was something probable that had happened to these guys. With this one, it kind of remained just as unanswered as it had been when I started looking into it. It kind of fascinates me, probably because of the creepy 911 call. Whenever there's something like that left behind, it's way more creepy, and it grabs you in a certain way. I don't know, I guess I'm gonna have to ask you guys, what do you think happened? I know there's tons of theories on, oh, it was an inside job by the police, or his brother Kyle was in on it, or there's so many things like that that are strange. And some people say that you can hear several voices on the 911 call, and at some point they say you can hear him whisper, "Help me." The 911 call, I said I would comment on it at the end here. I guess I'll weigh in on my, what I hear. I really can't say that I hear 2 different voices. Some people are not going to like that, because some people swear that they hear 2 different voices. I cannot sit here and say I hear one voice that is different from Brandon's. There's one point where she asks if he needs help or an ambulance. And basically he says yes, and then he says no, I need the cops. And people think that yes is another voice. I think it's just him being sort of weirded out in whatever situation he was in. He was just doing that thing where he says yes, and then he kind of gets his faculties together real fast. He goes, "Oh, no, I need the police." I don't know that that's a second voice. I don't know that it's not a second voice either. There's just not enough information there. There's a completely what's the word? There's a sentence near the beginning of the call that you just don't know what any of the words are, and there's probably a big clue in that. As for the whispering, "Help me," I don't know. I don't hear it. It could be static. A lot of people aren't going to like that opinion of it either. Your brain does that thing where it wants to hear things that aren't there, or it wants to hear familiar things. And hearing "help me" amidst static and a dead phone call is one thing it kind of might hear if it hears a little bit of interference. So I don't know. It could be those things. It could not be those things. As for the words actually said in the 911 call, he at one point said that there's the first guy, and I really think he says something shot. I think he came across something that he wasn't supposed to see. I don't know what that something was, some sort of crime. I'm not sure. Maybe he was, maybe somebody thought that he was trespassing. I do actually think Brandon started walking to town, and it was on this walk that he ran into whatever it was that caused him to get snatched away. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what your theories are. I know there's a lot of detectives out there that like this kind of mystery, so let me know. And this has been Odd and Unexplained.